Good morning, everyone. Hey, Chris. Hey, Caroline, Gary, Julie's, Jenna, Lori, Sherry, Goody Two Shoes, Jora. I saw you in here. I'd love to have you come join me. How's everybody doing today? Happy Saturday, May, Pointer Lover. So I have been deep diving into this case because when I was down the campground, there was an episode of Evil That Lives Here. And when I tell you, I don't know, I thought the same thing, Chris. I don't know how more people have never, well, maybe people have heard it. Put a 1 in the chat if you've ever heard of this guy, the Werewolf Butcher. I've never heard his name before. He's from Washington, the same place as Ted Bundy and many other notorious, but I've never heard this guy's name. The chat is not moving, so I don't even know if you're here. Let me come over to this side. Wait here. There you are. Hey, eavesdriver, Jason. Okay, some of yous are here. That's good. I don't expect an actual true crime story to get many views. People tend to love the chaos more, so that's okay. Hi, Polish. TLC is me. Catherine. Yay, I'm glad so many of yous are coming. Pointer Lover, I saw you in the beginning. Hello, hello. Oh, thank you, Caroline. So this one is like really one of the creepiest cases I've ever heard of. Hey, Jamie, it's good to see you. The guy's name, he is known as the Werewolf Butcher. Truly a creepy, creepy tale. Hey, True Texan. Jack Owen Spillman. And I don't know how we don't hear more about him. Everything he did, maybe because it's so horrific, right? Thank you, Loki's mom. Hey, Jameson. Well, thank you, Catherine. Hey, Delaney. Unfortunately, it doesn't bring in the views, and that's okay. I'm not here for the views. I'm actually here because this case, like I said, for days now, I've been looking into it because I'm just so baffled by all of it. This guy is unbelievable. His victims, their stories are so sad. But most importantly, this is another person who had the history, the hatred of women, literally from the moment he was a child up until he was 18. He spent every year doing something getting creepier. And from 18 until he committed what we end up, putting him life in jail, he was in and out of jail. And it blows my mind that they're able to get away with it. Thank you, Jameson. 21 months, one by Rose. That's amazing. Just Carrie. Hello, hello. Crime Brulee, Rondi, Mo and Co. Hello. Hey, Shanley. Tons of red flags. Tons. And you know what? Not just like normal red flags, right? Like this guy. So to start it off, as a child, he would stare at the TV for hours, just blanked out, rocking. He was one of 4 children. He was the only son. Mom had 4 husbands. None of the kids knew which one or who was their father. His birth name was actually, I wrote it down right here, Roy. And one of Mom's husbands adopted him and changed his name to be Jack. So his real name is Roy. Hey, Forever Army. Hey, Michelle. Yay, thank you. I'm glad you're here to learn about it. So starting off, there was already the signs of him being disconnected, associated with his siblings, with peers. But what is the beginning sign for every sociopath? Harming animals, right? And that's exactly what this guy did. So they grew up on a farm, and the sisters would capture wild animals, like wild rabbits, and they would care for them like pets. And one day he comes walking up to his sister with one of the rabbits. You want to come up with me, Jones? And I'd love to have somebody up with me. With one of the rabbits in his arm and the rabbit's limp. Now, this rabbit, she was taking care of for days. She grew to love. She was getting ready to release it. And he comes up with a smirk on his face, like a proud look of, look what I did. So the sister right away knew. She knew what he did. She ran to tell his mom, and the mom didn't care. She just handed the daughter a shovel and said, go bury it. So the flags were dismissed. Early on, Mom was busy in and out of the marriages. Just, I mean, you figure she had 5 divorces, right? And none of the kids knew who their father was. So this lady was like busy with herself. I mean, this is a little boy. By the time he was 8 or 9 years old, he had 4 different men in his life. Absolutely horrible. Just my oldest just did a paper on this for a final on one of her papers. No way. So am I. Hey, Miss L. Hey, Johnny. Thank you, Grave Evidence. Hey, Boo Berry. Hey, Savannah. Yeah, I know, Jason. I know. Oh, that's right, Jones. And I heard last night you're not feeling well. I hope you feel better soon. Good morning, Tracy, not Tracy. So, all right, going forward, right? I mean, this is going to get really graphic. I might as well go ahead and put up a banner now because this is going to end up being a major trigger warning. I mean, again, most of us enjoy true crime, so we should be able to kind of handle the details of it, but it is graphic. It ends up being really horrific. So Jack's crimes end up being caught and stopped in 1995. But from 1989, he was in and out of jail for indecent exposure, for RAPE, which was later dismissed, and I don't understand it, for being a peeping Tom, for breaking into homes, for armed robbery, you name it. And this guy was, I believe, if I'm correct, 25. You would think I would have, everything I looked up on him, you think I would have looked up his age at the time. Okay, so he's currently 54. So yeah, he would have been in his early 20s. He would have been in his early 20s. Spade, I can listen to what humans go through, but can't stand here what an animal being hurt. Yeah, that's a little bad, Loki smile. Okay, so he's in his early 20s when he gets busted, right? I listen, when I tell you guys I deep dived, I have pages. Well, the natural light is too bright, but whatever. I have the blur thing on. So I have pages and pages and pages of notes that I've taken. Hey, Tessa. So let's fast forward, right? So he gets out of jail. He actually escaped jail at one point. This guy escaped. He escaped jail at one point, okay? So Jack gets out of jail. He's now living with his girlfriend's mother. And, he's known around town. There's this one officer that would always stop Jack when he was out sitting in his truck at the shopping centers. And he would say to Jack, because he knew that he was trouble, he would say, if you're not shopping, get the hell out of here. And at that point, they were on a first name basis, him and this officer, who was actually a detective later on. But anyway, that he says to the officer, the same way you bird watch is the same way I women watch. Okay. This guy is completely creepy. So all of this weird stuff's going on. They're getting all these, homes are being broken into, and all these women are complaining about, this guy coming up and exposing themselves, this guy coming up and grabbing onto them. But nobody is putting together that is fucking Jack, right? Jack is just kind of going about the town like it's nothing. So Jack ends up living with this lady and her children. Okay. This was a single mother of 5 kids. She was low income, and she had a 10-year-old little girl, and she had a 9-year-old little girl. For 2 weeks, Jack lives in this home. Now, the mother says she never knew about his charges of assault. She never knew of his record of that, only that he would break into homes. But Jack didn't just break into homes. Jack would break into homes while the homeowners were home. He enjoyed creeping inside the house while people were inside the house. This is where he related to himself as a wolf. Matter of fact, he is quoted as saying, and if I'm able to play some of his interrogation, I will. He says, when it comes to wolves, we are both loners, and prefer to silently observe our surroundings and our prey. So imagine this, right? Imagine, Beachy, that you're just in your house as a regular day like today, and this guy's creeping in the background. This guy is in the room next to you. You don't even know it. And that is what Jack would do. And he would do this for hours, for days, for weeks, inside the same homes, different homes. But he always hunted his prey like a wolf. And that's exactly what he did. So he's living with this lady, her children. And one day, 9-year-old Penny just disappears. She also lived on a farm. This is back in 1995. The internet's not like it is today. Cell phones weren't like they are today. You know, little Penny and her brother outside playing, and she just disappears. So the 10-year-old sister at the time says that Penny went off with her boyfriend. Okay. Now, she later retracted this, but this is what the 10-year-old said. So the mother, again, isolated area, and cell phones aren't like they are. She has to drive 2 hours to go to the police to report little Penny missing. They right away say, you know, they believe it's a kidnapping. They're looking. As they're searching for Penny, they come across no other than Jack on a road where nobody else is, right by the child's home. So Jack says to the officers, they're like, "What are you doing, sir?" They're already aware of this guy. They're familiar with him. He's a creeper in town. And he says, "I'm friends with Penny's mother. I'm helping to look for her." So the police are like, "Well, we have no reason to suspect anything else." Okay, fine. This is all in Washington, Delaney. 1995 is the year right now. So they're like, okay, no big deal. You know, he's friends with the mother. He's helping look, until this officer goes and looks up Jack's record. He types his name in, and he finds out that this guy has all these charges for indecent exposure, for Peep and Tom, for RAPE. So now it's 1 a.m. He goes and knocks at Jack's girlfriend's door. Right? Just knock. Middle of the night. You're this little girl you lived with and you grew to care about. She's missing. Well, Jack wakes up and he's nonchalant. And matter of fact, the officer actually noted him as being stone cold. And they start asking him, "Where were you?" You know, blah, blah, blah. And Jack says, "Well, I was at a party at 5, and then I went and I took a nap." So they, at my girlfriend's house. So the police, they go and check his alibi. And sure enough, Jack was at the party, but he disappeared. And he came back at 10:30. And he came back covered in mud. Okay. Now, as for the girlfriend who lived with her mother, the mother says, "Jack wasn't in my home. The house was locked. There's no way he could have came here. He doesn't have a key." So they turn around. He turns around and he says, "Well, I broke in through a window." So at this point, they suspect Jack, but they have nothing to go off of, right? Just their intuition, just his history, whatever. 2 weeks later, Jack moves. And Jack moves in with his mother and his sister to where the next crimes start taking place. Good morning, Mark. So we have 9-year-old Penny just disappeared. Okay. Now this is where it gets graphic. And we're going to get really graphic here. The next victims, sadly, is a mother and a daughter. But wait, right before this. So now Jack's living with his family, right? 2 weeks after little Penny disappears, Jack goes to live with his family. He's living with his family at this point, okay? And his niece lives there. So his little niece has a little fight. They're 13 years old. She gets in a fight with her best friend. Put a 1 in the chat if you as a child or your child has ever gotten in a fight with their best friend. It's dramatic. It's upsetting. She's crying. And meanwhile, we're like, okay, you know, we know you'll be okay. I have so many notes, Mo. I've really studied this one up and down. So as she's telling her mother about this fight with the best friend, there's creepy Uncle Jack just listening in the background. Okay. Jack just came back to reunite with his family after going away for a little bit for the RAPE. The following day, the police come knocking at his sister's house. Oh, there goes the camera. A little more knocking taking place, right? So they sit down with Denise and they say to her, listen, you were just fighting with your best friend, and over throughout the night, this is what took place. The family pet, the hamster, the little tiny hamster, was beheaded, spun around so that blood would go all over the room. And then the knife that beheaded the hamster was stuffed into the head of the little girl's plushy panda. Police right away, they think it must be the fight she was just in. Denise is hysterical, crying. I would never do that. She's my best friend. The mother saying she was here with me. I know it wasn't her. Meanwhile, creepy Uncle Jack is leaning against the wall with a smirk on his face, listening to everything. Now, at this point, the sister she knows about Jack with the bunny. She almost believed him about the RAPE. But at this point, she has this gut feeling. She knows he is involved. Denise and this little girl, the uncle used to drive around all the time. Anytime his niece and her friends needed a ride, they wanted to go to the mall, if they wanted to do anything, he would pick them up and give them a ride. So the uncle was familiar with this little girl as well. But the police don't suspect him. Good morning, New Jersey Robin. They don't suspect him at all. So that goes unsolved until a little bit later, a few months later, 48-year-old, let me check my notes, 48-year-old Rita Huffman and her 15-year-old daughter, Amanda, also known as Mandy Huffman, are found by Rita's oldest daughter, deceased in their house. And I don't mean just deceased. This is where we're going to get graphic. Hey, Be Real. Okay, I'm going to warn you guys. I'm going to get really graphic here. Oh, this one's hard. Rita, the mother, was stabbed 31 times. Mandy was beaten with a blunt object. 15-year-old Mandy. Now, one thing to keep in mind is 15-year-old Mandy played softball as well as his niece did. And they think that this is how Jack knew, because he hunted his prey. He spied on his victims. Now, mind you, there's a woman who reported a man coming up from behind and grabbing her outside her house. There's the peeping Tom. There's all these situations in town, and now this takes place. Their bodies were mutilated and torn apart. Their skin was removed, and there were objects and places that our minds can't even go to on their bodies. Okay. This is on April 13th, 1995. Rita's oldest daughter, after phoning her mother and her sister, in the early mornings, she enters into their family home, and this is how she finds her mother and her sister. But it gets worse. And I know YouTube is going to censor the shit out of me here. Rita's breast, 48-year-old Rita, her breasts were cut off. Okay. Her genitalia was inside her mouth. Her stomach was cut open from her genitalia to her breast, and her insides were hanging out. There was blood all over the house, everywhere. On the couch, the walls, the ceilings, everywhere. Rita was on the couch. Rita's legs were spread so wide and so far to humiliate her. In the next room, they go and they find 15-year-old Mandy. Because he admitted to his crimes to avoid the death penalty. 15-year-old Mandy. Yep, the daughter and the sister, the daughter of Rita, the sister of Mandy, stumbled upon this scene. She runs out the house to a neighbor's house, screaming, crying. They call the police. 15-year-old Mandy was hit in the head with her softball bat. Now remember, he would go to the softball games and watch his niece play, but he was really watching this little girl, this 15-year-old Amanda, known by her loved one as Mandy. So she was hit in the head with a softball bat, and then she was stabbed. As Mandy is taking her final breaths, as she is laying there dying, she is, you know what? He then takes the bat and he does, you know what? This is the Werewolf Butcher, Jack Spillman. 15-year-old Mandy's genitalias were found on her face. Her mother, Rita's breasts were found beside her. Now, the thing with Jack is he had a very distinguished truck that he drove. It was a Chevy truck with big giant wheels, and it was silver. On the night of the crime, a young boy was taking his girlfriend home, and he noticed this truck sitting out back around 8:30 of the Hoffman's home. After the crime is reported and the police start asking, he comes forward, he mentions this truck. The police know right away whose truck it is. This is Jack Spillman's. Now, the little girl, Penny, it was about 6 months prior that she disappeared. And he ran from that township, that neighborhood. Those police knew where Jack moved to, but they never notified the new town that Jack was a suspect. They didn't tell him. They would never not do that. They didn't tell him. So luckily, his truck was spotted. And that night, that same night, at around, I believe it was 2 a.m., I may be mistaken, Jack was approached by an officer because he was sitting in the parking lot of a VFW. Oh, we got some guests. Hold on. Hello, Jor.
Hello, Granny. How are you?
Good, thank you. We have
This
another
oh,
guest behind stage, a
oh,
newer name. Let me go ahead and allow them up. Give me one moment. Hello.
Hello,
How are you doing?
I am well. How about yourself?
Pretty good, thank you.
Yeah, I was scrolling through and I came across this topic you're doing. This is interesting about Jack Spillman.
Yes.
I actually knew this guy personally. I was a corrections officer in Washington here. I worked in a unit where he was.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's very interesting. This guy, like, is the weirdest guy I remember. he was in my unit for some time, and a couple of the inmates, in fact, were like afraid of him. They like set him up, and made up a story that, he was threatening them. That's how they eventually like transferred him. But yeah, I literally, like, I read his file at the time, and yeah, this guy was a sicko. Like, if you see him even in person, you know, the energy, he is, yeah, he's a weird person.
He's a scary person. Wow. So you were a correction officer there.
Yeah, I was a corrections officer there, and like, I mean, he's from Spokane, I believe, from this
Yes.
Spokane area. And I mean, I don't want to paint Spokane as crazy, but we had a lot of sickos from there, um, like, who also have similar crimes like him, but he was a special case.
Oh, wow.
Now, was he on a unit with similar crimes that were committed, or was he in like a protective type of?
No, see, one thing like most people honestly don't realize is, like, you know, in Washington, it looks like honestly they encourage this type of stuff, because he was not like like, he was in close custody, but he was free in population. He's able to walk around, he goes to work, exercise, everything.
Mm,
Yeah. So, because there was another guy who ended up killing one of my former coworker, a female. This guy had issues with females, both of his crimes, because his first crime that they knew of, he's from Spokane as well. He like raped the victim,
mm-hmm.
and set her on fire, and
Mm.
she like jumped from the balcony. That's how she, like, made it alive. And then they put him in prison just for a couple years, let him out. He came out again and committed, I mean, like, similar crime. He posed as somebody who wants to buy a house. And when the realtor came and met him there, he put a gun to her head, put it in the trunk of the car, took her into the woods and raped her.
This is
And then,
Byron.
yes,
Yep.
Wow.
Okay.
yeah. And they brought him, Sheriff, Byron Sheriff. And they put him in second time for life. And then the crime he committed, in fact, my coworker, I saw her that day. I worked in that prison there. He hid in the church when everyone left. He strangled her with, my cord, and, you know,
Oh,
killed her. So, similar thing. So Jack Spillman, you know, um, in prison there, they just, because they used to, they wouldn't even allow, they don't want even people to know what kind of crimes these people committed.
that's
Like,
right.
they would hide it from even corrections officer. So pretty much they put people's life in danger, because they really wouldn't be rehabilitated. It's something that's in them.
But
So,
that's crazy because the crimes that Jack committed, there is no rehabilitation. He was like this from a child.
oh yeah, I totally agree. Like, even in prison, when you see him, like, it seems like this guy, maybe if the full moon comes out, he's gonna, if he sees a victim, he would strike.
Hmm.
Yeah.
He actually, so I never even finished off with you all about what happened to 9-year-old Penny. But he did later admit to a cellmate things that he did. He ended up admitting to his crimes in general to spare himself the
Death
death
penalty.
penalty.
Yeah.
And it
Wow.
was about a few weeks. So if you guys don't mind if I just tell the rest of it really quick, just so
Mhm.
everybody's aware of how this kind of closes out. So about, I guess it was in May. Let me check my notes. So in March. So you guys got to remember, in April he takes the lives of the mother and the daughter. In March, a hiker comes across a jawbone. The police show up. It doesn't take long for them to uncover the little body of Penny. But at the time, they couldn't even identify who she was. And it wasn't until DNA came back from the jawbone in July that they knew it was Penny. So at this point, they knew that Jack was a suspect. They just had no idea. But after Jack's arrest made news, the police from that township called over and said, hey, your suspect is a suspect in the disappearance of 9-year-old Penny Davis. So they actually approach Stephen, or I'm sorry, why did I say Stephen? Jack, and they ask him, do you know what happened to 9-year-old Penny? Well, he admits to what he did because, again, he's trying to avoid the death penalty. It was worse than anybody could imagine. So at the time I told you all, the 10-year-old sister states that Penny went off with her boyfriend. Well, Jack admits that the 10-year-old sister was his target. And a matter of fact, he says time was right, but the person was wrong. He takes 9-year-old Penny, puts her on his shoulders, takes her into the truck, and they go drive off. Nobody knows where he took her to, but he does admit that he had her tied to a tree and he tormented her for hours in every way you can imagine. As little 9-year-old Penny knows she's going to lose her life, she looks at Jack and she says, verbatim, I don't know why you're doing this. You're a good guy, but I forgive you. He then goes across her neck and she's deceased.
Oh.
Now, when they found her burial after the hiker finds the jawbone, they the one thing they know for sure is this is not their original resting spot for little 9-year-old Penny because the bugs are not native to the soil there.
Mm-hmm.
What they figured is about 2 weeks prior, Jack must have unburied her and was carrying her as her jawbone dropped off because it takes about 2 weeks for that to happen from the original time of burial. So they're looking for the original burial site. He won't admit where the original burial site is to this day, but he does admit that he used to unbury her several times for pleasure.
Like Ted Bundy did. Necrophilia.
Yes. And 9-year-old Penny, her body was in a similar position to what they discovered of Rita as far as her legs go.
Oh.
Yeah. So this guy was a real sicko. So imagine, as our friend on panel saying, you're working in a prison with these type of creeps. Oh, and he also told his cellmate that he wasn't done playing with Penny. She died too soon.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And, the crazy thing is this guy, in prison, as far as prison terms go, he was a model prisoner. He avoided infractions.
Mm-hmm.
He follows all the rules. He goes to work, and yeah, just like how Byron Sheriff was. Byron Sheriff, you know, always went to church. And the sick thing is, it's like, some women, they come in, like Byron Sheriff, somebody even married him in prison there.
Mm-hmm.
Like people come and visit them. So yeah,
Well,
Do you
yeah.
not find that prisoners that have like chomos, basically, they never have infractions. Like people that have anything to do with small children, they can go through prison life without an infraction.
Yeah, they fly under the radar. They don't,
Yeah.
bring attention to themselves. Mostly people that, inmates that, you know, have infraction upon infraction is like your regular street criminal,
Yeah.
wannabe gangsters, people like that. But like I'm talking real serious sickos like these, they are usually like the model prisoner. Like when I was working, I usually, that's how, when I see an inmate is that model, I would pull up their file. And 9 out of 10 times, just like she mentioned, you would find out their crimes is either they do stuff to women, children, they're along those lines.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Well, Jack was such a he's kind of similar to Ted Bundy because he was such a smooth talker, if you will, that he convinced Penny's mother that he didn't do it. Penny's mother, a few years after, even though Jack admitted it, stated that when Jack called her, she asked him, is it true what you did to to that mother and that child? And he says yes. And then she said to him, did you, unalive Penny? And he says no. Until this day, she still believes him. And matter of fact, she says that while she was aware of his petty thefts, what a lot of the neighbors probably didn't know is that I'm the reason Jack would bring things back into your house. Because I told Jack, you can't take things and make them yours. They're not. You have to return them. So this mother who knows that this man took the life of her 9-year-old little girl immediately forgave him. And matter of fact, she wanted the neighbors to know that the reason this guy re-entered your home while you were there and put back your belongings is because I told him to. As if that was supposed to, like, thank you, ma'am. But she just never, she doesn't believe that he did it to Penny. She refuses to believe it. So he must be some type of smooth operator,
I think they do. They can charm. They seem to have this. There he is. They seem to have a lot of charm about them, and they do fly under the radar, and they don't break the rules when they're somewhere like this.
Yes.
So he actually killed the mother and daughter that he killed, Jess.
Yes.
Did he inflict on the daughter what he inflicted on her mother?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, it was horrific. Oh, and here's the other part. So they end up tying him together because he's sitting after, this is a year after Penny, not even a year, it's about a few months later. He's sitting out back of a VFW. It's about 2 a.m. A police officer approaches him and says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Oh, I'm just sitting here, So the police officer runs his name and lets him go. But again, he's a suspect, right? They're already, at this time, they're getting reports about the car being there from the neighborhood boy that was driving home his girlfriend and whatnot. So they go and they search the VFW and they find the knife with blood on it in the trash can. At this point, they go and look for Jack, and Jack is driving around. And as he's driving, he throws a mask out the window, a ski mask. So they stop, they grab the mask, which ended up having blood around the mouth of it. He later admits that he drank Amanda's blood. And he also drank little Penny's blood as well.
Wow. Like, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
yeah. When you see him up close, I mean, you'll be convinced that this guy is actually, yeah, he's capable of doing those things.
He gives that type of feeling, that scary feeling to him.
Oh yeah, I mean, so even to say he's charming, I mean, I don't know, maybe because what this guy, when you see him, you would know he's a sicko. Like, but you would think, because like you don't want to like just see people and pass judgments, because you could be wrong. Um, but when you read about him and you watch his behavior, how he socializes, like he keeps to himself. He had few people he interacted with. He follows all the rules, avoids infractions, and knowing Washington as crazy as it is, I wouldn't be surprised if someday they try to release him back out. Yeah.
Washington, also known as Walla Walla.
Yeah, I mean, that's what. Yeah, I mean, because he was at the prison I worked at in Monroe years
Oh yeah.
ago.
Hmm.
And then some of the inmates, there was an inmate that lived on the block with him, not far from him. Some of the officers, believed he punched himself in the face and accused that he accused Jack of doing it. So that's how Jack got booted out of there. But I mean, do you blame the guy?
No.
Yeah, you can't blame him because he has to share a shower with this guy. So
Mm.
so
So you would have been also Gary Ridgway.
oh yeah, Gary Ridgway, yeah.
You were actually a guard of. You would have saw him, Gary Ridgway, and also the Carnation Killer.
Yeah. Gary Ridgway, he I only saw him in passing. They held him there for some time, but he was not in general population.
Mhm.
He was segregated. Um, he was segregated, and the Carnation Killer, that's the guy. I believe it was him and his girlfriend that of the entire family.
6 of them, her family. That's right.
Yeah, and in fact, the sister, her brother also ended up in our prison, but he was there for like drug related issues. So I used to talk to him, ask him, uh, but I mean these are really sick people. Like the Carnation Killer, he seems charming. When you see him, there's no way you can believe that this guy is capable of doing this.
Mm.
Yeah,
I think that's what makes them even scarier is that you would never know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole thing, even the the brother, you know, like the one of those family members, you know, he also, I believe, like he was like HIV positive, and I believe he was trying to infect like people with it. So yeah, that was one of the little crimes there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of mental sickness there.
That they say goes all the way back to childhood.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like
Wow.
it's the behavior is like you wonder where if somebody taught them that behavior or whatever. Like someone
Right.
said, Washington houses they are long-term predators on McNeil Island. Yeah, they used to, and also a place at Monroe. There are Twin Rivers. They call it Twin Rivers. Uh, the place looks like a college campus, so they're not really even. It's not punishment. These people are free to. They have pool tables. Um, they just free to walk around, do whatever. You know. So sometimes you even drop your guard. You wouldn't even think these people are actual monsters. So I don't know if Washington here, it's like help, they help, you know, these monsters over their victims, if you ask me.
Really? You think so? Excuse me.
Oh, I know. So I used to work there. I know the type of briefings they give us, like, because I remember, like, because we have to do checkings and stuff, and I was working at that Twin Rivers, where they put all these people that mess with children, women, a lot of sick stuff. So, like, I would walk around, to check the cells. So, this one guy, I checked looking in his cell, he had a problem with it. And he's like, he said he's uncomfortable. I said, oh, how do you think that little girl felt? So he was upset. Like he goes and reported, and like they had a talk with me. They're like, oh, you can't say that, blah blah blah. And I'm like, how is treating these people like babies or making them feel like what they did wasn't wrong? They're not gonna change. So in prison, they're not there to change, to be honest.
Well, that's like sincerely concerning. What? How did they respond after your coworker? After
You
your
mean?
coworker was unalived, how did they make any changes? Did they, or did it just go about like it didn't happen?
Well, they even what they did, they held the guy in segregation. Then eventually they moved him because they figured that's the best thing to do. Maybe other officers who have, because we have close proximity to him and relationship with our fellow co-worker. So, but the prison itself, they did like an overhaul. I was thinking it was gonna be everything was gonna be tight. Right after things passed, they even changed it. They laxed things. Um, they even changed it because you cannot call them inmates or offenders. We used to, first you gotta the paperwork says offender. So
Hmm.
they changed the name. Um, they started saying, "Oh, that name is terrible. It makes them feel bad." Uh, they call them, what is it called again? Clients. They wanted to change it to clients.
Clients.
So they even said, stakeholders. So I literally saw, like now how you see in different cities, the wokeness, how they made the police the bad guys.
Hmm.
So it's the same in prison. They work their way. So the officers, you are actually the bad person, not the inmates. So they changed it and made it more lax.
You break the law, you go to prison, right? So you're going to
Right.
be an inmate. You're not getting out of there until the government says you're allowed out, the justice system. So, I believe, yes, you have to be treated well and treated, humanely, but no, they're not clients. They're inmates, prisoners.
Yeah, first inmate, then they change it, yes, like to offender, then they change, they say that's a bad word. You can't call them that. You can't keep reminding them of, you know, whatever. So
Mm.
yeah, the prison actually, you would think they would be tighter, but they went super woke, super woke. So when you see these people come on TV saying, "Oh, we have to be humane and you know um, remove the death penalty, let these people out," know that they are releasing monsters into society again.
Absolutely, especially
Mhm.
monsters like this. I
Yeah.
just because he tells first off, they didn't need him to tell the truth of what happened to Penny because her body was found and they had enough circumstantial. His truck was seen, he was seen looking for her, but all because he spilled the details that her own mother refuses to believe. He spares himself the death penalty.
Right. Yeah. I'm not. It, God whatsoever, but some of these people, they should definitely practice the Old Testament law on them, if you ask me.
Mm.
Yeah, because it's in them, so they would just look at, for example, the reason why I gave Sheriff as an example. All his victims are women. Even putting him in prison did not stop him from taking a unaliving a woman officer. You see,
Mm.
so yeah, that itself is a problem. In fact, the prison, what they did was, instead of taking responsibility, they try to blame it on, other officers and say, oh, why you guys didn't go check, blah blah blah. So if you're worried that, and you already know this guy's history, why would you, you know um just let this officer, a female, work by herself in a secluded area,
Yeah.
and then allowing this sicko to be there? You already know the history of the individual. So what makes them think, he's all of a sudden not gonna act on what he's used to? So
Mm.
so they blame some officers, fired them. Some eventually got their jobs back, but yeah, it's like, the population is not protected as people might think.
That poor woman, she was only going
Yeah,
to do her job.
yeah, because it's not about the victims. They don't even mention the victim. It's all about, the offender.
Yeah.
Yeah, all about the offender, how to make them feel good about themselves. And I mean, I'm not saying don't treat them like a human being. Whatever they did, they're gonna have to answer to God at some point. But don't also make it seem like these are not monsters.
And that's what they are. Like, I don't care what kind of childhood he had, Jess, right? I'm sure he didn't have a good childhood. I'm sure it was pretty bad. But there has to be something in him to do that.
Right. And also in Washington state, what people don't realize, even if they, back in the days, they put you on, you know, give you the death penalty. If you, like the inmate, gain weight, you're up to certain weight, they cannot perform it. They would have to wait for you to lose weight. So yeah, you know,
Wow.
yeah.
But the problem in America, isn't it, that you have run out of, isn't it the medication, the sedatives? There isn't any.
No, they get to choose.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, if you choose it to be done by rope and you gain weight, they can never do it until you lose weight.
Right. But Washington State have done away with the death penalty, haven't they?
Well, in the past, but not, they like Inslee, the woke governor, passed the law while back. Um, I think it was actually the other governor before him, the
Hmm.
lady, but they passed it into law. It's no longer in Washington. You cannot perform the death penalty anymore.
No.
But thank you guys. I'm gonna be watching in the
Oh,
background.
thank
Thanks for
you.
having me.
No,
Oh,
thank
it's
you.
such a pleasure. I could listen to you all day. Do you happen to have a channel?
Yes, it's called the Afridamus Report.
Okay, let me go put that in.
Africana's report.
The Afridamus Report.
And do you cover true crime?
I don't, but I should.
You
You
should.
definitely should.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about that.
Absolutely. You have the voice for it. You have the experience for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad you stumbled upon us today. I'm very honored to have you on here and speak from experience because they often say that prisons are for rehabilitation, but the fact of the matter is many of these people can't be rehabilitated and they continue. A friend of mine just passed away, a family friend just passed away from fentanyl. and they
Yeah.
already released the dealer, and his mother's now protesting all over. Like, my son's gone, and this guy's back on the streets. So I couldn't even imagine if somebody came in and mutilated my family the way that this guy did, the way Jack Spillman did, and then he's still breathing to this day.
Yeah,
Literally.
it's unfortunate.
Mm.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It
thank
was a
you.
pleasure.
All right. Bye.
He has a very interesting channel, Granny.
Yes, does he?
He does.
Mm.
Mhm. Excellent. I really enjoyed speaking to him. Imagine your channel, it just came up.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It is.
So, unfortunately, during this,
Oh,
yeah, my phone was going off, so I have to upload something for all of you because, once again, well, you know what? I could do it on a separate one or upload it separately.
oh, let me see.
So
Let me
apparently,
guess.
Amanda.
Yeah, it
Okay.
is. It is. She's once again leaving out that she was the hype man.
Mm-hmm.
Per
you want-
usual.
Do you want to talk about it or do you want to not?
Yeah, I am actually.
Okay.
Do you guys mind if we transition to a little bit of unfortunate drama really quick? It's up to the chat, really, but I feel like it actually comes into true crime, right? So we kind of have to, in a way, we have to address it. So there was this woman on here who, years ago, was in a lot of trouble for planning out a school shooting. No?
Yes.
Then we'll end
Oh,
this and
yes.
we'll start another one. I think that's a good
Okay,
idea.
that's fine. I think that's a good idea.
Come right back up with me, Jor, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So keep in mind, there were real victims here. It was nice to speak with the new guest on our channel.
Brilliant. I really enjoyed that chat.
That was, yeah. And it's unfortunate that I was being distracted in the background.
I know, love.
But, let's remember at the end of these stories that are, while they're fascinating and it's fascinating to hear how somebody could be so sick, it's unfortunately at the cost of mother Rita Huffman, her daughter Mandy Huffman, and little 9-year-old Penny Davis.
Rest in peace.
Yes. Thank you for being here, and I hope to see you all back here in just a moment.
Okay, love.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.